There'll probably be more names that come out as well. This week's going to be a busy one. Players, and you'll have more of them joining in as well next weekend. So let's talk about transfers. We have had our first one. Hurrah! Pierluigi Gollini has arrived. 26-year-old goalkeeper from Atalanta. Obviously, I spoke about this last week, that he was looking to be on his way. Oh, a bit of lightning there. You may hear a big old roll of thunder as well. There you go. I don't know if you're going to hear that or not. But thunder and lightning, very frightening. But not Gollini, because he sounds like it's a tough one to kind of sum up, really, because I've heard lots of very good things about him. I've heard some little things that he needs to work on. But what I thought was quite key about him was that he, in his first words, he very much was talking about that he wants to be the future of Tottenham, but right now he really wants to learn everything he can from Hugo Lloris, which is perfect, which I think is exactly what Tottenham will want. Lloris, he's got 12 months left on his deal. We'll have to see what happens with that, but I don't know. He's spoken before about going back to France in his later years. There's also been talk of maybe an MLS move. So I don't really know whether we're going to see him extend his stay or not, but he had his most consistent season last season, I'd probably say in a while. I thought he was very, very good. So I think for anyone to learn from, I think he's perfect for him. And Gollini, he speaks good English. Obviously, he'd been at Villa and Man United before. United in his younger years, Villa kind of briefly. He was there for 6 months before being loaned out. I think it was to Atalanta. He obviously, unfortunately, isn't a homegrown player. He wasn't at United long enough for his 21st birthday, but it's a very clever deal. I know the powers that be and Daniel Levy get a lot of flack at Tottenham, but the way that this deal's been structured, it's very clever. It's pretty much Tottenham get him on loan for a year while he learns and studies, and will probably, he will play in a hell of a lot of the cup matches in Europe. And then at the end of the year, Spurs will have an option to sign him up for £12.8 million, which I think is 15 million euros. Or I believe that there's another. Technically, what would happen is if he played, I think it's 20 competitive games. I'm not entirely sure it's 20 competitive appearances in all competitions or 20 Premier League games. I'd imagine it's competitive appearances. Spurs have to do the deal. It becomes an obligation rather than an option. And quite frankly, if he's played 20 games, they've been impressed enough with him. It's very clever. And, £12.8 million for a player who was mostly the first choice keeper for Atalanta last year as they finished, was it third in the league, and he played in the Champions League. He's a good keeper. For that sort of money, that's a bit of a snip, especially if he becomes the successor to Hugo Lloris. It could be a real bargain going forward. Very good work there from Paratici. He's in. He's come in. Joe Hart, I'm told, has been informed that he's not in Espirito Santo's plans. So kind of is down to him now whether he moves on and gets some more game time elsewhere. Otherwise, he's third choice and very unlikely to play at all this season. It's a tough one. I don't think he did that badly, Joe Hart, at all. I think from everything I heard, he was a good presence in the dressing room, real kind of a winner, and rubbed off on a lot of the players as well, that kind of attitude. But if he's not part of the plans, he's not part of the plans. And other departures, a sad one, Toby Alderweireld. Obviously, I think I said either the last video or ones before that he made it clear that he wanted to leave Tottenham. I think we're probably all slightly surprised at what looks like his destination. He's heading off to Qatar, where he's been holding discussions with, I want to get the name right, Al Dahail, I think is how you pronounce it. Anyone from Qatar can tell me whether that's actually said right, which is probably unlikely. It's a very good deal for Tottenham. And him, really. I mean, for Tottenham, I think we're talking in the region of about 10 million or more pounds, which for a, 32-year-old who wanted to leave, 2 years left in his contract, one of the biggest earners at the club. Obviously, only just signed that new deal, didn't he, when Mourinho came in a couple of months later. So to be able to facilitate his wishes to move on and get a decent fee and get a big earner off the books, I think he was set to have his medical over there. He flew out there yesterday, I think it was, and he was, I was led to believe he was going to do his medical there and finalise all his terms and everything. I know some people have said, but he wanted to go back to Belgium or the Netherlands. What I would say, and I think I said this in a previous video, it's very difficult for that move to happen with his wages as they are. So perhaps from a personal perspective, for him, this gives him a couple of years to earn very good money still, just to kind of, make sure he's financially ready to then step down financially when he goes back to, whether it is the Netherlands or whether it's going back home to Belgium or Antwerp, it kind of works on that level. So yeah, sad to see him go, but you'll have him have gone. Juan Foyth's gone, obviously. Villarreal took up the option to sign him. Cameron Carter-Vickers is expected to move on. That's 3 centre-backs heading out the door, defenders. Bringing in, potentially upwards of 30 million, 35 million for the 3 of them. We'll see. Which is something that Tottenham struggled to do. So getting players out the door and getting value for them, he's good. And I know they'd be open to offers for Davinson Sanchez and Eric Dyer as well. They are properly looking to revamp the defence, So whether they come in or not, I certainly know Davinson Sanchez has a fair bit of interest in him. Sevilla looking at him very closely as well. So you could see some real changes, certainly in the centre back area, because obviously Christian Romero, which I was very clear on a week ago now, that I know a lot of people were reporting that Galini was Spurs were talking to Atalanta about Galini, and obviously I said last week, lads, it's not just Galini, it's Romero as well. Spurs are very much in advanced talks for both of them. And I don't want to jinx anything, but certainly there is a growing confidence within Tottenham that they could get this deal done for Romero. He, the more and more I've looked into him and looked at his footage of him, and I'm not talking just YouTube compilations, I'm talking about, because we use things like Y-Scout and stuff like that, so having a slightly bigger view at what he does and longer clips of him in action. And from everything that I've heard from people that watch him regularly, he honestly could be one of the biggest signings Tottenham have made in a long time. He really could be a real rock to build that defence around. While I want to also slightly caveat things, it's a complicated deal to do. Tottenham, as I've said previously, they like to structure deals. They like to do things in certain ways. So it's, I'm not going to say it's absolutely 100% cast iron, this is going to happen, because it's Tottenham Hotspur. And you just, if anything, the managerial search has proved you just cannot do that. So, but what I would say, there's a positivity. There's a hope that this is going to happen. The player, I'm told, is keen to join as well. I was always warned that there was a chance that, if a Barcelona, say, came in, that he would kind of be like, oh, hello. But I think maybe the tough times that clubs like that are facing as well, gives Spurs a little bit more of a clearer path towards him. I'm told we're looking at Spurs have to pay roughly about £38.5 million, which is about 45 million euros. You've probably worked that out if you're cleverer than me. I did have to look it up and use a currency converter. But yeah, that's still, I'm trying to work out roughly what I paid for Davinson Sanchez. Maybe slightly less. I'm trying to think about the extras. There may well be extras including this one as well. But from what I understand, Daniel Levy has given the green light to this deal, to try and make it happen. It's an interesting one, because it really does show how much Paratici has essentially come in. And if he wasn't listening before Levy, which obviously I'm not going to say he wasn't, but certainly Paratici has come in and gone, man, that defence needs a proper shake-up. Here's a player who is superb. He's just won the Copa America, Serie A Defender of the Year. that is Serie A. If you're Defender of the Year in Serie A, you've done something very well, because that is a league with a lot of good defenders and defensive play at times. So, he's very much been convinced, this is the guy. Get him in. Fix this big old kind of error that Spurs really should have fixed last summer. So Romero, Atalanta are going to do that deal. Bring him in for 13.8 million. Then sell him for 38.5 million roughly. So you're looking at a £20 million profit on a player, and then they can, do a similarly clever deal with someone else. And everyone kind of wins really out of that. But yeah, let's get it over the line first, get it done. But like I say, there's a bit of positivity about it. And for Daniel Levy to give it the green light, that's massive in itself. So hopefully Paratici works his magic, because do you know what? If they bring in Christian Romero, I might get slightly excited about this season to come, because I think that would be a massive, like I always felt Højbjerg was a big kind of brick in the wall, a big foundation thing to prop it up. Nice mixed metaphor there. I think Romero in that back line would be a real huge kind of plus to build from. But yeah, let's see what happens. It may be that I get to the end of this video and there's even better news out there already, or as Tottenham Hotspur, it could be absolutely completely opposite news. But what will be interesting for me next is that Spurs, I was always told, had the intention of trying to, if possible, get 2 new centre-backs. So it will depend now on whether, if Davinson Sanchez goes, I think he's probably the one you'd imagine out of him and Eric Dyer may be likely to move on. Purely because I think there's maybe slightly more of a market for Davinson Sanchez, because he was at the Copa America, played decently, finished 3rd place. He was kind of on the international map, as it were, in the shop window, and Sevilla interest, and I think there's a couple of others around Europe are as well. So if he were to move out the door, then Spurs start looking at other players on their list. I think Romero very much was the one that Paratici really liked. Obviously brought him to Juventus in the first place from, I think it was Genoa. But then you start to look at other players, like obviously we know Jules Koundé was a player at Sevilla they really liked. Koundé's an interesting one. He's more a higher value than Romero. But obviously with the Sevilla interest in Sanchez, it slightly balances that up. I was told that his first choice was Real Madrid. Again, whether he's a player Real Madrid do end up going for, if they lose Varane, it seems to be, the noises seem to be that they might not, and that he would be interested in Tottenham if that wasn't an avenue for him. My goodness, wow, a Romero-Koundé partnership would be incredible, but I just wonder whether that's too much money as a whole to do right now in the window. I don't know whether that would be something that they would have to move on Sanchez and maybe another or so. We'll see, because there are other deals also going on. I mean, but a certain centre-back, I can't stress this enough if I haven't said this enough before. Fabio Paratici's method, sorry for those who've already heard this a million times, he looks at 10 different players, negotiates for up to 10 different players for each position he's looking for in his team, which is this crazy spider web of transfer dealings. And that's not even including the names out there that are completely wrong, which Spurs aren't looking at. So, you look at it, and the other players that I know they've got an interest in, Lacroix, Wolfsburg, Milenkovic at Fiorentina, Skriniar, we know at Inter is obviously someone the club have looked at. They certainly were looking at Joachim Andersen, but looks like while they've kind of gone off for Romero, he's maybe slipped down the list slightly, and looks like Crystal Palace are going to get him. It's tough. I liked Anderson. I thought every time I saw him live a few times, and I thought he looked very good. For me, from everything I hear, I mean, Romero is a bit of a step up, without being disrespectful in any way, but he's obviously younger, and he's a Copa America winner. He's Serie A Defender of the Year. We're talking about a very, very, very good player, and I could understand why Spurs have prioritised him out of the list really that they're looking at. So if Anderson goes to Palace, that'll be a good chance for him to kind of essentially show what he can do, I guess, properly in the Premier League again after Fulham. I saw another name linked today. It was the chap at what was his name? I want to get it right. I think I might have it written down here. Oh, it's Marseille chap, Duje Koletakar. I saw him linked, but I understand he's not someone that Spurs are currently looking at. But yeah, there'll probably be more names that come out as well, and that's it's the way it is. It's the Paratici way. It's going to be very frustrating for me, but it's fine. It's fine. I just want Tottenham to get someone, and if it's Paratici's method at the end of the day of getting the best player that he wants, crack on, because my happiness and comfort in reporting is not as important as Tottenham doing the best deals out there. That'd be fantastic. Where else are we looking at defence? Serge Aurier, very much intent on leaving the club, has made that very clear to them. I think his agent's working on stuff. Tottenham, as I understand it, there isn't a bid in for him right now, but I think his agent is very much trying to sort a move for him. Just hopefully it comes sooner in the window. If it comes later in the window, it's just a bit of a mess for everyone involved. Who else we got? Tomiyasu. That's an interesting one, what's happening with that, because obviously he's away at the Olympics with Japan. However, he also has a bit of an ankle injury, which has kept him out of their first 2 games. I think they were playing today against Mexico, and he didn't feature in that either. So that might be one of those where Spurs just have a little look and see what's happening first. See what's happening with the ankle. The Olympics makes it all slightly more difficult to do the deals. There's another young player at the Olympics we're going to talk about in a moment. But Tomiyasu, let's see. He's not going to be the most expensive player in the world. And like I said, we were talking about, up to 20 million, maybe slightly below that. Bologna, the president's admitted, yes, Tottenham have held talks over him. I think he may have even said they made a bid. So let's see on that one exactly where that goes. I think, like I say, we'll see. I think this week's going to be a busy one. It really is. It's probably not going to be too much happening at left back, I'd imagine. Midfield, central midfield roles. I understand the club are open to offers for either Moussa Sissoko or Harry Winks. Harry Winks is an interesting one. Up to this point, he's certainly, I'm led to believe, has signalled his intent to stay at the club. He'd like to stay and fight for his place under Espirito Santo. However, I do wonder, me talking about Spurs needing money, I think he's one of those players where, especially as a homegrown, and Winks only needs to start having a good season again, and he's back in the England squad. He's one that I think they can get a bit of value for, a bit of money. And, there's talk that both Villa and Everton have got an interest in him. I think ultimately it'll be down to Harry Winks. If he's told, look, we've got Højbjerg who's going to always start. Skip's coming back and looking like phenomenal talent. It may be that you're not going to get, again, you're going to have a season where you may not get the game time you want. Whereas if you go to Villa or Everton or another club, you may find yourself a week in, week out player. And, ahead of the World Cup, which obviously comes a little bit sooner, not being a summer one, it may be something that benefits you more than anything. Keep an eye on the Winks situation. Be interesting to see which way that goes. But certainly that would put money in the coffers for Tottenham. And whether then, if you lose Sissoko and Winks, whether they have to look at a central midfielder to come in. It'd be interesting. Obviously, we know he's not really technically a central midfielder because he kind of plays all over the place. But obviously, we know they've had a long-term interest in Marcel Sabitzer. So have to see what comes of that. His obviously contract situation makes him very attractive, but it makes him very attractive for a lot of clubs. So see what happens in central midfield. And another player, I said I was going to talk about someone else at the Olympics. It's Brian Gill. So I made it sound Brian Gill from down the road. I'm sure that is not how his name's pronounced. It's probably like Gil or Gilles or something. And I'm sure if anyone could tell me, that would be great. Although every time I say that, I must stress, every time I say someone tell me how it is, I get about 4 different versions in the comments of everyone telling me different ways to pronounce it. But yeah, he's 20-year-old. One of the hottest prospects in Spanish football right now, a young player. He's a Sevilla player, but he went to Eibar last season. In a team that was really struggling and eventually went down, he still stood out. And I think I saw somewhere maybe he was one of the top chance creators in the league, and that was for a team that was right down the bottom. So, very talented players. And what I kind of like about this deal is that it kind of came a bit out of nowhere, which you might think, what? Why is a reporter like that? Well, while my reporter head, of course, wants to know about every single deal happening, when there is one that's suddenly like, boom, I quite like that from a club perspective, because I think ultimately all clubs would love to work like that. It's the best way to work. And, especially when it's a very young, talented player like that, to suddenly come out of it, no media outlets were, reporting it until it's, we understand it's quite an advanced stage now, or very advanced. I like that. I like that. It sounds a bit weird because it kind of goes against everything my profession would believe in. But hopefully you know what I mean. I like the fact that you can still do deals under the radar in today's world, which is so obviously saturated media-wise. But yeah, he's at the Olympics right now. He's playing with Spain. I think he came on as a sub in both their first games. I don't think there's any issue with him doing, say, a medical out there, or certainly a big old chunk of the medical out there. But obviously, then wouldn't be able to join Spurs fully until he comes back from the Olympics, which is likely to be, I think it's early next month if football finishes. I can't remember exactly, but it would be a while. And then he'd have to isolate. And the other thing I'd say about him is that he's very young. He's quite slight. I think the Premier League would be quite a wow, kind of bang physically for him. He'd have to very much adapt, and I'd hope that people wouldn't expect too much from him straight away. He would very much have to adapt and grow and put on a bit of bulk, I'd imagine, as well to handle it. But he's very talented. He's a dribbler. He's creative. He can play. I think he mostly plays. He plays on the left mostly, but he's versatile. And I looked up where he was playing mostly for Eibar last season, and he kind of sometimes was behind the striker, he was sometimes on the right, but I think primarily was on the left. But yeah, he's talented young man. And I think that one we'll see happen sooner rather than later. The only sad thing for me, and I know this isn't going to be shared by everyone, but Eric Lamela heading off in the opposite direction. Lamela, he loves Tottenham. He's very settled, very much his family are very settled. He's got 2 young ones as well. I'm told he needed a little bit of convincing to head to Sevilla, but he was convinced in the end. And for him, as I said before, I don't think he's in a position now where he's going to be a regular starter for Tottenham. And I think he could be at Sevilla. I think he really could. And I like him a lot. I'm not going to go into it too much because Lamela haters get very upset. He's rubbish. He never plays. But I just always think he adds something to the team when he does play. I do. I think when he comes off the bench, I think he just adds something to Tottenham's game. That risk-taking, that aggression. And I like it. So I was going to go dumb and dumb. I like it a lot. I do like him a lot. He's good. He's a good guy. I've obviously, again, interviewed him a few times. And he's just frustrated, more so than anyone else with the injury problems he had. But he's... I hope this gives him a really good kind of spark to his career because, he's had some tough times and he's a very good player. He really is. And I think it would suit him down to the ground, to be honest, at Sevilla. I'm sure Sergio Reguilon would have told him loads about it as well, having played there on loan. And yeah, I think that will get wrapped up quite quickly. I think it's taken a little while purely because, or since we found out about it, because the swap element makes it slightly more complicated, and obviously there's the Olympic side to it as well. But I think that will get done sooner rather than later, and that's a talented attacker who, when you look at it, with Lamela going, that still means you have Gil, Son, Bergwijn, Lucas, Ali technically can play on the left as well as through the middle. You've got a lot of talent there as well, and a lot of players who are very versatile. Son and Gil and Bergwijn and Lucas can all kind of swap sides as well. And that's huge. All play behind the striker. For Nuno Espirito Santo, options. I used that word the other day. Options. All about options. And it really is for him. One link I saw was Mikkel Damsgaard, who's the Sampdorian Denmark midfielder. I'm told that there's not a player they're currently looking to make a bid for. I'd imagine... maybe with Gil coming in, he's a similar kind of versatile player who can play across that attacking midfield areas. But yeah, I'm told that that's not a goer right now. Very talented player though, don't get me wrong, and it could change in the future. But at this moment, I'm told that that's not one. I think that's kind of it at the moment. I'm sure as this window goes on, we'll start to talk more about who they're looking for as the striker to come in with Harry Kane to replace. Obviously, Carlos Vinicius has gone back. And we must also forget that Gareth Bale, who obviously won't be playing for Tottenham next season, his more than £200,000 a week wages are also off of the wage bill as well. So that opens stuff up for Tottenham as well. So yeah, transfers, we will talk more. There is more to come. I think they want to get these deals kind of tied up, and I think this week is going to be a chaotic and hopefully exciting week as well. You know, we've already had one deal, and I think we'll have a few more to come in the days to come. And fingers crossed, Romero, because I think that would be superb. And then I think you'll see, if you see movement in the other direction, very quickly others will also follow, because those deals will be at an advanced stage where then you just have to pull the trigger, as it were, when the money rolls in. Other little bits of housekeeping. Found out the other day that Spurs are looking to bring in a new head of emerging talent, which in layman's terms is head of academy recruitment. And it's Chris Perkins, who is the head of academy recruitment at Everton right now. He did a really good job at Derby. He was credited with, they went through, got to a stage where they had almost 50% of their first team were academy graduates, and he was very much credited over five and a bit years of working at Derby of having kind of brought all of those players through really, or into the club. Was only at Everton for a year, a bit more than a year, and Spurs have already looked to snap him up. So I understand he's on gardening leave with Everton, and he will make the move to Spurs probably after the summer. But that's, it's another building block, and it's someone that can help them kind of try to get the best players in the London area and beyond into the academy. So yeah, let's see, there's him coming in. Pre-season players returning. Who have we got next? I think the Welsh boys are back, or expected back tomorrow. Hugo Lloris and Moussa Sissoko, I'd imagine, are also this week because they went out of the Euros roughly the same time. Spurs' policy is a minimum of 3 weeks. At least they want the players to take off and rest after a tournament, but potentially it's kind of roughly about a month after. So, yeah, Roden Davies, it's almost exactly a month they'll be coming back. Then you've got Harry Kane and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. I'd imagine if you're looking about a month after the semi-final and the final, you're getting very close to the first game. I mean, certainly players can come back early if they want. Personally, I just wonder whether we're going to see them in that first game. I think there was even a report yesterday that said Kane's unlikely to. But I think it'll be the same for Man City. They'll have players like Raheem Sterling and John Stones and players like Phil Foden. I think he was injured, so he didn't play, did he? But I think you'll certainly see some players, and we saw it, I think, was it the World Cup year, where the first game, a few clubs were easing those players who'd been out a bit later back. Because also, Espirito Santo's wanting a lot more fitness from his players. So the likes of Harry Kane is going to have to come back and really work on his fitness. It might be just too risky to throw him in a huge match like that. Obviously, Spurs need Harry Kane, of course they do, but maybe the risk outweighs that one game. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure a lot more will be made out of it, and it will be made to look like Harry Kane snubs Spurs, downs tools. But I think it will be more about just the fact of not really being ready, having only just returned in a few days before the match to pre-season. Obviously, it'll be you'd think, a slightly better level of fitness than maybe others because obviously he was playing in a tournament, but it still has to be treated so carefully. So yeah, I think that's it. Obviously, we've got the MK Dons friendly coming up on Wednesday night, which I'll be going to as well. So I'll be able to give you lots of stuff from that, and hopefully seeing Fabio Paratici on his phone a lot as well. But yeah, we'll see. We're getting there. I'm really enjoying having matches. I think we've got open training next weekend as well, which I'm trying to sort myself getting into as well to watch, because that'll be fascinating to see a little bit of an extended training session, and obviously slightly different to what you'd see at Hotspur Way, but certainly you'll get a good old aspect of the players, and you'll have more of them joining in as well next weekend. So there you go. So like I say, with the way things are happening right now, you might have got to the end of this and I might be saying stuff you think, well, that's already happened. And if it has, brilliant. Or it might have gone the other way and that'd be rubbish. So there you go. Right, I'm going to head off. yeah, I'm just telling you, there's nothing else, other bits of housekeeping. I think I've covered everything I possibly can. I'm sure you're shouting at me going, no, you didn't talk about blah, blah. But if I didn't, I shall talk about them next time. So yeah, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.